Welcome back to the show. Today I get to speak with Cameron King. He's been freelancing for 15 years, so he's very experienced at what he does. He's a videographer, editor, motion graphic designer, and he has built up a lot of success for himself, and he's been able to live the lifestyle that he wants, freelancing from home. He, like me, is a freelancing dad. His wife is a stay-at-home mom. They homeschool their kids. I mean, it literally is a carbon copy of my life. And so I'm really excited for what he's going to share with you today on how to build up success over time in your freelance business and how to navigate work-life balance when you are raising a family and what that looks like and what are some of the advantages of being able to freelance when you're a parent. He's going to share some of the key lessons he's learned over the last several years as he has built up a freelancing career, and I'm really excited to welcome him on the show today. As you might notice, I'm going to look a little bit different in the interview because we had the interview at 4 a.m. this morning, and I'm recording the introduction later in the day today. Welcome to the show Go Back to Bed, where we wake up way too early to discuss what really matters in life and business, and why the home should be at the center of your solar system. I'm going to bring you into a world where entrepreneurship is a way of living, not just a way to make a living. In our conversations, you will get practical advice to help you start your day with clear priorities and confidence to pursue your goals. Most importantly, you will learn how to find your voice, meaning you know what you believe, you know what you want, you know what you stand for, and you become the writer and director of your personal and professional life. So welcome to the show, Cameron.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to bring you on. You are a freelancer and you've had a bit of success and you have some things to share with us. And I wanted to start with you telling us more about your story and how you got to where you are today. What are some key things that helped you to gain momentum in your freelancing career? And just tell us a little bit about what you do.
All right, yeah. So basically, we can just start off from the beginning of the career, which was pre-graduation from college. I graduated in college in 2006, but I actually started working in media probably around 2004, just doing weekend gigs at the local news station, and then I did that for a couple years. Graduated 2006. Worked in my hometown for a couple years and then decided to move off to a bigger market because where I lived at the time and where I currently live now, 15 years later, at the time didn't really have a market for media, and the technology just wasn't there. You know what I mean? Like, to have an editing station would cost you 10 grand plus. So after a couple years working there, I decided to just kind of put my feelers out into bigger cities, and Washington, D.C., sort of bit. And I started working there. I worked a couple years internally at the FAA, doing stuff in airplanes for a couple years and just traveling all around the United States, shooting on old Canon, EX3s, mini DV tapes and all that jazz. And did that for a couple years, and then I finally went freelance there after building up my name around the area, just, connecting with people. This is back when Facebook was still fairly new, but you really didn't make a lot of online connections like you do nowadays. Most of your interactions were in person, or most of your networking. Sorry, I couldn't figure out the word. Most networking was going to networking events, being part of the film clubs in town and that sort of thing. After networking for a couple years there, I went freelance there for a couple years, did that for a while, and that's when I actually started being like, oh, well, freelancing is a lot of fun, and I get to bounce from client to client, and I get to kind of be just, your own boss, so to speak, but not necessarily, obviously you got to work for clients, but you get to kind of just pick and choose your projects and as much as you want, but I was all about making money. I didn't really care about the projects too much at the time. And I was young, no kids, all that jazz. And then after a couple years, I finally hooked up with a nice production company in DC where I was just heading up all of post-production. And they were called Third Story Films. We did a lot of brand work for things like Chrysler, Volkswagen. We worked for the USA Olympic Committee, and a bunch of other just big brand stuff. It was back whenever branded films were new on the scene. We kind of were part of that first wave of branded film making and posting stuff on YouTube and social media and stuff like that using, Canon 5Ds. This is back late 2000s, early 2010s. And then, from there, I worked there for about 3 or 4 years, moved to Atlanta, worked at a huge mega church there as a director of film, working for a small team, and then worked there for about 3 years. Then, part of my sort of life story was that my father passed away, and, back in 2017, and we reassessed some things in our life and decided to move back closer to home. So now I'm back where I started in 2006, living out in Louisiana, and just kind of doing the freelance remote thing now. We've been, fortunate enough and blessed enough over the years that technology has progressed enough, and I've had enough clients and met enough people and friends along my 15 plus year journey that I can now have this, lifestyle that I have now. So I've been doing this stint of freelancing for about 4 years, since 2017. It's been great. It's been awesome. I've been pretty steadily busy. I get to take time off, vacations, all that stuff. And I'm actually starting to look into moving more of a small studio model as I keep growing.
That's great. So do you do videography and editing primarily? Is that?
So I would say my primary moneymaker is editing and motion design. So I do occasionally do a little bit of local videography for a couple of clients here and there, but I wouldn't say it's anything to, I wouldn't call myself like a DP or a shooter editor, but I would say local clients, yes, I do market myself as a guy who can produce and edit the whole thing, just because it's a small enough market you can do that. But when I work with my clients like in DC or LA or New York, it's primarily post-production.
Yeah, I did. So I started my freelance career doing videography, and just with a local client where I lived, and did editing for them. And then I found a couple more clients doing videography and editing. And for a couple of years, that's primarily what I did. And I actually, even before that, I was doing random weddings and shooting those and dabbling with all sorts of different types of videography. And then I ended up realizing that I didn't really like the videography side as much. That's what I studied in school. That was my background. I just didn't like the having to constantly go places for shoots and things, and then I just stuck with editing for a while, and then moved even from that into doing marketing and still doing some editing with my agency, but I myself am focusing more on marketing. But that was a big part of what I did a lot of my freelance career. Something I wanted to ask you is why do you freelance? Why did you take this route? What has driven you to pursue this type of career, even though it's more unusual and it's got more unknowns, and some people think that it's not stable enough and not secure enough? Why have you chosen this path?
Yeah, that's a. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a tough question, but it's definitely a multifaceted question. So it felt good at the time. Like I mentioned, my father passed away, and we decided to do something else. And from a practical standpoint, if we were to move closer to home, there just wasn't any work for me to look for full time. And on top of that, I didn't really want to be anywhere full time unless it was a really good fit. I'm not just going to force myself to work somewhere just because it was full time or whatever. I'd like, if I come to my hometown and there's a job for a media person, that's pretty much all it's going to be here where I'm at, is like a digital media specialist or something like that, like not something that's going to be like, something like a, creative director or a director of film. There's just, those roles don't exist, or they're very rare or already taken. You know what I mean? So, especially somebody who's been doing this for years and years, I'm not going to start off doing something that I was doing 10, 15 years ago. So there was that aspect of it, of just sort of career progression, the natural career progression. And we felt like we were in a pretty good spot to just take a leap of faith and trust that, once I get the word out to all my former colleagues and clients that, hey, I'm free now, that things will happen. And if not, worst case scenario, I can always, get a part-time job on the weekends while I build up the rapport again with folks. So yeah, there was that. And, we actually wanted to live out in the country. So we live out in the middle of, I would say it's the middle of nowhere. We do have neighbors, but we have like 5-acre lots, that sort of thing. But it is, a good solid 30 minutes away from town, and, we have chickens and, a garden, that sort of thing. So it's afforded us a lifestyle of living out in, a rural area. Because we've done the big city thing in DC, and we loved it there. We still love going back and visiting, but we have 3 kids now. And so it was, like I said, it's multifaceted. And to be honest with you, I've after doing this for a couple of years, I've actually made more money freelancing than I did full time. So the only thing about full time was just that it felt secure. No full-time job is ever really secure, as we know, especially with COVID hitting and just the nature of the world changing, especially in our industry. People switch jobs all the time, roles get moved around, and it's just never a guarantee anyway. So, why not be the leader of your own sort of, ship, and steer it wherever you want to go with it. So,
yeah, that's something I tell people a lot is there's this common misconception that freelancing is less secure. And from my own personal experience, I had a full-time job right out of college. I lost that job because the company I was working for had to downsize. They were a business that hit a rough patch, and they had to let go of some people. And I lost all of my income all at once. And I'm like, I don't want to be doing that again. I'd rather lose a client and only lose a portion of my income and be able to get that back and find a new client. And I've known people that have lost jobs many times, and you look at that and realize, oh, that's really not more secure. Diversifying your income over multiple clients seems to me like it's a lot more secure. And even if it seems weird at first as you're trying to get enough clients to fill in the income that you want, it does provide more security. And I like how you brought up just the aspect of being able to be location independent, where you can live in the type of place you want to live in, but still have a city job to give it a label, where you don't have to work for a rural gas station. You can, but you can live in that kind of community, and you can really live how you want to live. And like you said, you're earning more money than you did in an employee job. And I like how you also brought up with being able to specialize in certain types of jobs that you almost can't find. I had the same issue where I'm like, I'm not really finding jobs being posted for a video marketer or a full-time video editor. It was usually these companies, I realized they're only looking for services like these for only a few hours a week. And I'm not going to get a part-time job doing that at 20 hours a week, or especially 40 hours a week. There's some larger companies that are building a media team and they have full-time employees, but you're still not getting paid as much as you could get paid as a freelancer. So what are some tips that you have for how you got to that point where you are earning more than you would in a full-time job? What was that process like of getting enough momentum with clients to where you kept having income coming in more consistently?
So one thing I always tell folks is, just stick with the long game. especially if you're starting out. I've been doing this for 15 years, so I have, 15 plus years of networking, becoming friends with people. Because when you're in the trenches with people working on projects, you bond, you become friends with them, or you become total enemies. You never want to talk to them again. So when you're doing creative work with people, there is this aspect of birthing something that you've created with someone, and there's a bond there. And a lot of people want to get the band back together and make another one of those things again, whatever that is. So you create these ties with people, and eventually, something else comes on somebody's doorstep, and you call these people back together, and we make something cool. So play the long game, be nice to people, because actually there's a story I always tell about one of my bigger clients right now. There was this lady, and she was actually when I worked at Third Story Films, she came in as an editor, like whenever I needed help. She was a freelancer, and if I had a lot of overflow work, we handed it off to her. And this was back in 2010 or so, and now when I went freelance again 7 years later, back in 2017, I put the word out on social media, and she's like, "Cameron, you're freelancing now? That's great. I'm the creative director at this agency now, and we're looking for freelancers everywhere." So just by being nice to her back in 2010 and connecting with her, 7 years later, she's running an entire team of creatives, crushing it. She's doing awesome, and she's looking for freelancers. I'm like, great, hit me up. And now she's, at certain periods of the year, she's one of my bigger clients, coming in. So yeah, it pays to play the long game and to really, don't burn any bridges, that sort of thing. You just be nice to people in general. That's one of the bigger things, and just stay in contact with folks as well. Whether that's just always communicating with them on social media in some way. Not always, don't bug them every single day, but like once a month, if you see an interesting post they post, comment on it. Just stay in their ear a little bit. So yeah, it's just a constant game of just sort of staying top of mind. If you are freelancing, that's another thing, is just stay top of mind. Just always be interacting with people in some form or fashion, whether that's shooting off a monthly email to all your clients or potential clients like, "Hey, I have availability coming up in a couple weeks. Just want to let you know." Don't harass people, obviously, but just let people know that you're available. Like, they don't know. There's a tree fall in the woods and make a sound, that sort of thing. They're not going to think about you at the top of their mind unless you are at the top of their mind. They're going to be like, if they're scrambling for an editor or a motion designer, they're just going to be like, who do I pick? But if they remember in their brain that, oh, I just got an email from Cameron, like last week, he's available. Let's hit him up. So yeah, always being on top of mind, play the long game. I would say that's probably the two bigger things you have to sort of stay focused on, because being freelancer is not instant. It's not like as soon as you go freelance on Monday, you're going to be booked on Tuesday. That's not how it is. You're going to have to make the best use of your time and really just get a plan, stick to it, and eventually you'll see some traction. Yeah, I would say, we've been doing this for a while, so we're a little bit more blessed and seasoned as far as like knowing people. So just, get out there. If you're fresh and you don't know anybody, just say to like, you just graduated college, and the only people you know are the people you went to school with. Start doing your own projects. Start really just gaining a little bit of traction. Stick with a plan. Get a social media plan, that sort of thing, so you can start getting in front of people.
That's great advice, and that seems to be the common lesson from a lot of freelancers that I've talked to who have become successful, is that understanding that long game, because that's what really messes us up. That's what was messing me up at first, is that I was very impatient with the process, because I was coming from being used to, you just go and apply to a job and then have an interview and then get hired, and now you have all the income you need to cover your expenses. Now you got it all coming at once, rather than I just put in a ton of work, I just got a client, and now that's only covering a portion of what I need for income, um, and sticking it in to that long game throughout that process is hard. And it gets to that point where it starts to have that compound effect. I like what you shared about just the subtle things that you can do to stay top of mind to people in your network, so that when the opportunity arises, they contact you, they call you, and as you keep building that network, eventually that flow really comes in. But it's all these subtle things you're doing for a long time that starts to add up. And I wanted to, thanks for sharing those tips with us. I wanted to shift a little bit and ask you, how do you balance family and freelancing? How do you figure out that dynamic? Are there any challenges associated with working from home, freelancing, and raising a family? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would say, there's, if you look at this in a way that is there's the sort of the daily balance, and then like the monthly and yearly balance. We'll just kind of go start off with the daily balance of it. I have three small children, 8, 5, and 3 months now. So, we juggle quite a bit. And on the daily balance, I would say I get started pretty early. It's 4 o'clock now. I don't get started this early, but I do get started, pretty close to this time anyway. Just to kind of get my bearings, to get my head on straight. And then, I usually hang out with the kids in the morning once they wake up, and then let, mom wake up and all that stuff. And then during the day, I usually try to pack most of my work in the morning, because I'm usually no good in the afternoon. I'm not as good, and my kids are usually need more attention by then. They're doing their schoolwork and all that stuff. So I try to be more available to them in the afternoon, say like after 2 or 3 or whatever that is. So I like to pack it all in the morning, and then in the afternoon I can just hang out with them a lot more freely. But, obviously there's that dynamic. If I have something I have to, really get done by today, then obviously I have to sort of shift priorities. But freelancing does give me that that flexibility to be like, what, it's 2 o'clock. I've done enough for today. Let me go and just hang out with the kids, give mom a break, and do that sort of thing. But on the sort of the yearly, or the, if you work in a full-time gig, you start off, you only have 2 weeks of vacation, which is pretty standard, And me, I'm thinking, 2 weeks of vacation, that's nothing, man. Like, I'm thinking that's nothing. I like being able to be like, what, I have a free week next week. Let's go on a little Airbnb vacation and just hang out and, unplug for a little bit, especially in this business where, I could be like super booked for like 2 straight months. I am burned out. I don't want to touch a computer. I need to take a week off. And this, this lifestyle gives me that flexibility. And even if I am booked during that weekend, I can always find a fellow freelancer to hand it off to, or whatever. So it definitely helps with that. And I love being able to just, take off at lunch and go head over from my office to the kitchen and just hang out with my kids, talk to them, eat lunch with them, cook them lunch, whatever, take a long lunch. So yeah, that balance is definitely, it's really nice. And there are times where I sort of think, if I were to ever grow and expand and do more things like you were mentioning earlier, videography, or, shooting more, I was like, well, that means I got to be away from the house, and I don't want to do that. So there's, unless that's something you want to do, obviously, then go for it. But me personally, at the age that my kids are right now, I want to spend as much time as possible with them, and really being an influence in their life. I don't want to be someone that they think works all the time. So that was important to us as well. And my wife's a stay-at-home mom, so I'm the sole provider, and so she gets to spend all the time with them as well. And so it really was important to us as the kids got older that we just, freelancing just made sense as far as a pace of life and stuff like that. And the thing about freelancing, you can make it as busy as you want or not as busy as you want. So let's say last year I made a pretty good amount of money last year. So this year I've been able to not really this is my own choice, not really look for a butt ton of work. I haven't really been hustling as hard as I have in the past because A, I'm a little burned out. B, I have enough in savings to try a few new things, to experiment with a few new things. And I guess it's just A and B, and just to slow down a little bit, and that's been really nice.
Definitely. I completely resonate with you on everything you just said. And that's a big reason why I love freelancing as well, as being able to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my family, and just those little moments throughout the day. I have a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and all the moments that I didn't miss because I was here, because I was able to be a part of it. With my son decided to attempt walking for the first time, my wife was able to call me out and say, "Hey, come check this out," and look what he's doing. And I've loved being able to be a part of that. And like you said, I mean, they're kids for such a short amount of time, and I want to be able to. I know that at some point in the future, I may be able to get busier, but for now, it's just like you. I choose to have the break on a little bit with how many hours I'm working, and I only work Monday through Thursday, so I deliberately take 3-day weekends. And just like you were talking about, I like having 4 to 6 weeks of vacation throughout the year. 2 is a very small amount, and I think you realize that as you're raising a family, you realize that, yeah, man, if I was working double the hours, I could be making. Let's see how much more money I could be making. And then you realize, okay, if I'm making enough, I just enjoy being able to have more time with my family. And you realize what matters most, and it's easy to make that choice. You're like, okay, as long as we're comfortable enough and I'm paying for the lifestyle that we want, the time with them is more important than having so much more money than I need right now. So glad you brought that up. Are there any challenges as you were building up your freelance business with being, you probably understand similarly to me, because my wife as well is a stay-at-home mom, and I was always the only time that she worked was before we had kids. And actually, when I lost my full-time employee job was right around when my first son was born, and that's when I attempted to start freelancing. I understand where you've probably experienced the same thing of being the only income provider, being a new dad. What was that like for you to figure out how to deal with the pressures of that and being okay with that role?
Okay, I'm gonna be. You want the honest answer, or do you want the made up answer?
Yeah, the honest
Because
answer.
there's the honest answer. There are times where obviously, your fight or flight, part of your brain kicks in. There's 3 weeks where nobody's knocking on your doors, nobody's giving you a call, and you're like, oh no, we're all going to starve, and have to go scrape for mushrooms in the woods or whatever. But it doesn't. Then you have to sort of remember that things usually come through, things usually work out for the best, and stuff like that. So it's had its ups and downs, mostly ups though. Every time I get afraid, I usually get a call the next day, and I have to remind. This was back in the like 2017 when I started really doing this full time again. I would have those, and over the years it's gotten much easier. Now if I don't have work for a month, I'm not worried about it. It's either planned out or we have enough in savings where it's like, I'm okay for the next 3 months if nothing happens. If COVID 3.0 hits and for some reason nobody wants to make any sort of advertising or media for whatever reason, we'll be okay until the world picks back up, hopefully. And you always have to remember, worst case scenario is that I go and get a job that is not in this field for now, just so I can provide for the family. You just have to kind of do what you got to do. But it's a daily reminder that everything's going to be okay and you'll be fine. But the fear is real. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. I mean, it happens to most of us, especially as somebody who is the sole provider. It's a real fear, but you just have to kind of constantly remember and have some faith and do what you can control, which is doing those little networking tips, doing being responsible with your money, and things like that. Just make sure that you're on top of your stuff.
Well, thank you, Cameron, for sharing that with us and any other uh, dads out there or parents who are providing for their family and freelancing. It has challenges, and there's times when there's a lot of pressure, but you get to that point where it becomes comfortable and more secure than even any other type of job that you could have. And like you said, you get these influx of income that allows you to put a lot in savings to cover when there is gaps or when there is a drop, and so everything works out just fine. The last thing I wanted to ask you real quick is, what keeps you from going back to bed? The theme of this show has to do with not giving into the temptation to go back to bed, to stay in your comfort zone, to do what everyone else is doing. What keeps you continually getting out of your comfort zone so that you can grow in your business?
I mean, really, a lot of it is. I mean, there's this psychological term called exposure, and the more you do something, the easier it becomes. Like I said, like we mentioned with the fear thing earlier, being a parent. And, just over the years, we're also, we're a family of faith as well. And after you take a couple of risks, it gets easier to keep taking risks, and it actually becomes normal. And there are times where you're living a risky lifestyle, and people look at you kind of strange, but you don't feel strange. You feel like, well, this is normal. Of course, this is how we're going to live because this has been so great. We don't even think twice about certain things right now. We homeschool our kids. I freelance. There's other little things that we just do that most people wouldn't even think about doing because it feels too risky, or it's, not everybody else is doing it. But the path of least resistance is not always the best path. So I think I might have veered off on the question a little bit, but basically, I get up and do this every day and try new things every day because it works. You're going to get it wrong sometimes, but whenever you do get it right and it hits, it's an awesome feeling, and it usually pays off. High risk, high reward sort of thing.
Definitely. And that is true. As you start to take those little risks, it becomes easier and easier, and then becomes a habit. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that I will likely have you on the show again. I know that there's plenty for us to talk about. We have a lot in common. We homeschool our kids too. I freelance at home. It's you're like the twin that lives on the other side of the country, and there's just a lot that we share in the way that we approach our career and family. And is there somewhere that you want our viewers to go to learn more about you, learn more from you? How can they connect with you?
I would say the main place that I hang out on is all the social media. You can find me at Cam the Man King. That's the handle. That's pretty much the handle everywhere, I believe, especially on Instagram and TikTok. I reply to DMs. I'm pretty active on those. Mostly, I should be a little bit more active at times, but balance, like we talked about earlier. It's not my jam to be on there all the time, but I try to stay involved as much as I can. And so that and on LinkedIn as well, I'm starting to become more beef up my presence on there as well. And I also have a website, camthemanking.com, that I'm kind of constantly updating here and there. That's where you can find me, at camthemanking.com. Feel free to DM me if you have any questions, all that jazz.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Cameron, for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation this morning. Cameron really shared a lot of valuable insights on how to stick with something long enough to really see the results. That is one of the most important lessons you can learn as a freelancer, is how to be patient enough to do a lot of small things that maybe don't bring dramatic results right away, but eventually the compound effect kicks in and it all adds up, and then results start to pour in, and then eventually you make back the return for all the work and all the effort and all the time you put in initially where you weren't making much money and you weren't getting the results you wanted. It just takes time to develop the skills, to build up the network necessary to have a continual flow of clients. And so if there's one golden nugget from today, it is that to stick with it, to have patience in the process of you developing as a freelancer and you building up your business and network so that you can have the success that you want. If you bail out, if you give up before you're getting those results, then that's the only way that you can possibly fail, is by giving up on it. But if you stick with it, you will find the success that you're looking for. And I really enjoyed talking with him today as well about what it's like to freelance from home as a dad, and the pressures that come from being the only income provider, and the joys that come from being able to spend more time with your family with this type of career. I can't imagine living in the way that me and my family does if I wasn't freelancing. It just wouldn't work. I can't be going and commuting to some job 40 hours a week and see my kids as much as I do. And that's one thing that I talk about a lot, is just that if you're somebody that wants to put family first, if you're somebody that's raising kids and you have a family and you want to spend more time with them, you have to consider freelancing. And that is the only way that I can begin to comprehend that that's even possible, where you can make enough money and only work 20, 25 hours a week, and you're making plenty of money, like he said, to be able to take a lot of weeks off throughout the year for vacation and extra time with your family, where he's able to build up a bunch of income, and as income pours in certain months, then he's able to put a lot of money away into savings, and then he's able to take some time off to pursue some other things and focus on other things. And you have that flexibility when you are building a business from home as a freelancer. So with that said, if you've liked this conversation today, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. The podcast is all on there if you want to just listen through audio instead. Also go to airlight.tv, where you can get show notes and a transcript of this episode. And if you're a freelancing dad, be sure to go to freelancingdads.com, where I have resources specifically for, of course, freelancing dads. I hope you have a good day, and I will talk to you in our next early morning conversation.